Thank you for joining us, ladies and gentlemen, for this breakout session, which is scheduled for 1 hour on brand reputation. My name's Steve Tate. I'm the moderator of the session. My business is Crystal International Standards, and we are a standards and risk management business specialising in delivering services to hoteliers on a global basis. The session today really is about brands, brand reputation, how you enhance brands, how you measure brands, and how you protect brands. We've heard a lot in the last few sessions, if anybody was on the brand X-ray this morning, about the emergence of brands and the emergence of brands within brands, lifestyle brands that represent different segments of the market and the sub-segmentation of the market. So brands have become much more important and more popular and continue to become so, and there are new brands being launched on the market all the time. Completely brand new offerings in the market like Airbnb, which just didn't exist a couple of years ago, are an important sector in the market and are a brand in themselves. So there are threats to brands. We're living in a changing world, so unfortunately certain areas of the market, hotels and tourists, have become a legitimate target, or in the eyes of the terrorists and criminals, have become a legitimate target for them. And how do you protect against such threats? A lot of what we see in brands is subjective. A lot of imagery is shown of people taking part and staying in hotel brands, taking part in the activities that surround those hotels. And it is very subjective. However, objectively, a brand is also a distribution channel. It allows hotel groups to sell the same concept in many geographies and capture their segment of the market. So brands offer differentiation, but they also need to be homogeneous. They need to be repeatable in certain areas. And at the end of the day, a brand is a promise of delivery, but it is essential on hoteliers and operators that they deliver on their promise. I'm joined today on the panel by experts from various segments of the market, hoteliers, distribution companies, and auditing businesses. And to start with, I'd like each of my panel to introduce themselves and give you a little bit of a flavour of their background before we start the discussion of what we're here today for. So, going straight down the line, Rob, would you like to?
Sure. Thanks, Steve. Good afternoon, everybody. My name's Rob Rush. I'm a managing director of a division of Deloitte, the global consulting firm called LRA by Deloitte. I started a business about 25 years ago, and in June of last year, we got acquired by Deloitte. Want the mic? Okay. We focus on customer experience measurement and brand protection. Came out of the hospitality industry, doing a lot of brand protection audits, quality assurance work, sentiment research for the hospitality industry, and I think we do that work today for 7 or 8 of the top 10 global brands. We're about 400 people that all came over to Deloitte, and about 25% of our revenues are generated outside of North America. We're based in the U.S., but we have an EMEA office in Salzburg and an Asia-Pacific office in Singapore.
Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. Actually, I've got a microphone here. Good afternoon. I'm Alison Broadhead, the Chief Commercial Officer for the Jumeirah Group, based in Dubai. We're a luxury hospitality company operating hotels, restaurants, adventure water parks, and an academy for hospitality in Dubai as well.
Hello, I'm Wilma Kellerman. I'm representing the Steigenberger Hotel Group. Previously worked with companies like Best Western, marketing organization, very much in terms of branding, very difficult. Residor, introduction of the Radisson brand in Germany, but also new brands like Parkin and Regent. Then a short episode with Starwood, a lot of brands, very interesting. And currently Steigenberger with very clear 3 brands, which I hope we will learn more about later on. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jeff Andrew. I'm the Chief Operating Officer at World Hotels. And World Hotels, we've been around for 45 years. We represent the interests of around 450 independent hotels, 4- and 5-star, as well as some small regional chains. And I think hopefully the perspective that I'll be offering today is very much from that perspective in terms of the importance of independence. And I've spent most of my career over the last 30 years dealing with independents or being within small chains. So it's an interesting time in the industry for us, and happy to share my thoughts this afternoon.
Thank you very much. So as you can see, we've got a very cross-section of the market. But I suppose the first question is, what is brand reputation? What does a brand represent? And the first question really is for Rob as a reputational management consultant. How do you go about the business of making the subjective objective? How do you measure a brand and its performance from month to month and year to year?
Yeah, so I would say brand is a perception of feelings that consumers have about a company and an organization that is fueled by personal experiences that they have with the company or the brand or their products or services, or referrals or information they read or hear about the brand. So it's the sum of all of those inputs. In the hospitality industry, which clearly has changed as a result of social media, those opinions are formed every day and instantaneously. We all understand feedback through Facebook and Yelp and TripAdvisor, et cetera. So reputation is fueled by that. Reputation is fueled by customer surveys, purchase intent, brand equity scores that corporations achieve for a whole variety of things. And then I would say, one of the themes and evolutions in reputation is companies that are now focusing more on, what I would call social responsibility, which is kind of the ethical framework that a company has about doing good for the world and citizens and the environment. And I think that is a serious consideration for a number of leisure and business travelers today, and it affects their purchase decisions as well.
Interesting, really interesting. You mentioned things like TripAdvisor and social networks and the score and things. Is it these kind of things you look up before you do an audit, or are you aware of the scores before you get involved in a?
Yes, so Steve, a lot of the work that we do is compliance, licensee compliance, audits and inspections on behalf of the licensor in the hospitality, restaurant, retail industries, automotive industries. So we're really measuring performance against a set of operating brand regulatory standards, which typically has to be done in the field. It's not necessarily how you feel about something. Yeah. It's either in place or it's not in place. So the temperature of food served, life safety, licensing, things like that. But one of the changes that we've seen in our business is the brands now are not painting all of their hotels with the same brush. So to the extent that they have insights from other devices like social media surveys, post-experience sentiment surveys that indicate that certain hotels might have issues around service elements, others might have issues around capital expenditures and things like that, then I see that we're starting to modify a portion of the audits that we do to reflect that information which we now have.
Oh, thank you. Great. Alison, upper high-end brand like Jumeirah, how do you measure it across you know, the whole offering, because you're not just in Dubai, but you're in iconic locations around the world.
Yeah.
How does the Jumeirah brand transfer from one country, one culture, one geography to another, and how do you measure it?
Well, I mean, essentially what you're measuring is kind of overall customer satisfaction, which of course is driven between the gap on what guests think they're going to experience and what they actually do experience. And there's a number of points in the process where that can actually go wrong. You know, right at the beginning, I suppose, of the guest journey, when they're actually booking or looking to make a kind of a travel selection, what they think they're going to experience and what the manager or who is running the business actually thinks the guest is going to experience. And they can be two completely different things. You know, and again, it's various points right up until the guest actually has stayed with you. And so I think, you know, we try and measure and do measure through services like yours, through sort of mystery shopping, which actually just takes a core set of our brand standards, and either we're compliant or we're not. And that's actually quite transportable, and that's like this global application to what those standards are. I think we also use a company called Medallia on the kind of the old sort of JD Power kind of guest experience, where we seek guest feedback. And of course, the final one, of course, is our online reputation, which is an amalgamation of that unprompted, spontaneous feedback that, of course, you have no control over what the guest is saying about you. So I think it's the sum total of those three parts, how you respond to it, but mostly what you do about it. Because, you know, astonishingly, although I think 95% of companies actually ask for feedback, very few of them actually do anything with it. And so that's the gap that has to be closed.
Really interesting. So you're saying you get a lot of information, but the important thing is the knowledge that's gained and how you respond to those prompts that are coming back from your guests.
Well, sure. You know, I mean, I think this is something like 95% of companies ask guests for feedback because we're supposed to do that. We're supposed to ask, did you enjoy your stay? Did you enjoy your purchase? But only 50% actually do anything with the insight, and then less than 15 actually change processes or systems as a result of feedback and actually tell the guests what they've done. And so, again, it's that full circle of making sure that you actually do get better and that you do respond to what your customers are telling you.
Interesting. And Wilma and Steigenberger, same kind of question. High quality, high end hotels. Do you have a set of standard measures that you have in place? How does it work with Steigenberger?
I think as a hotel company we use probably the same measurements as my colleague here does. I think what is important, though, is that we give the local staff, so the GM or also the people working in the hotels, that we empower them to actually catch it before it escalates and before it gets into the media or before they have to respond. So try to make it right if something goes wrong before the customer leaves the property. So catch it when you can. Also, I think what we have started to do is that we talk with people while they're in the hotel. So see what is it indeed, what they are lacking, what they're missing, and again trying to make it right while they are staying, so that we avoid any negative social media.
Very good, thank you. And Jeff, with World Hotels, you've got a different kind of set of problems because you represent a lot of different properties, different owners with their own brand aspirations. But how do you make sure that fits with the values of World Hotels?
It's a really interesting question, and I think you almost have to step back and say, how do we define brand here? Because actually, which brand are we talking about? I think we immediately leap, because we're in the hotel industry, to our hotel brands. But let's face what we're looking at the moment over the last few years. First of all, is a massive transfer of allegiance from the stay brand to the booking brand. I mean, that's what the OTAs have been all about, is building their own base of loyal clients who are loyal to the process or to the booking tool versus the hotel itself. And I think off the back of that, what we're seeing is almost, I would describe the emergence of the micro brand. Because ultimately, and I'm sure everybody in this room has had the same experience in terms of when you're booking hotels, certainly for your personal travel, what you're cutting through to is the property. And in our world, that micro brand is a single hotel. And you're not going to necessarily trust or need to trust or feel the need to rely on something that has been expressed at a brand level when you can get right to the property that you're going to stay at. And you can read all about it. You can find out exactly what your peer group think through social media. So in all sorts of ways now, that booking is now being influenced by directly what you know to be at property. Now, one of the questions that came up on the distribution panel yesterday, if any of you attended that, was, and it was, I think it was Expedia, there was Booking, there was Google, and Marriott stuck out on the end as well. But the question was asked, can independents survive in this world where basically the search drives a consumer or a potential guest to the highest bidder? And I would answer that by saying, I don't think, in many ways, there has never been a better time to be an independent. Because the world actually is beating a path to our door right now. And if that wasn't true, then you wouldn't have Hilton Curios, and you wouldn't have M galleries and autograph collections and tributes. And the latest one on the block last week I was reading about, Unbound from Hyatt. Non-branded brands are now flavor of the month. And why? Because chains are recognizing that, in fact, purchasing decisions can be made with confidence based on the evidence in front of you, based on a specific property. And if you just do a cursory examination of what's actually happening in the market, something we do on a regular basis, for example, is if you look at the top, take 10 destinations in Europe and look at the top 10 hotels in TripAdvisor or Booking.com, and you will find that there's, I would say, no more than 15% of the hotels that are in that 100 hotels are part of the big international chains. And I'm excluding here my colleagues to the left. But the biggest international chains are not represented in those lists. So it is possible for an independent to survive, and the brand is the hotel itself. What we work to do as World Hotels is help that property to understand itself and to sell itself effectively so that we can sell it and promote it. But the tools are there to be successful as a brand of 1 or 5 or 10. That's the nature of the world we're in today.
Excellent. I wrote down while you're going through that brand is reputation and reputation is brand, and there's very little between them at an esoteric level. So your brand is your reputation.
Yeah, I mean the reputation. What do you want a reputation for? That's another question that you've got to ask yourself. What is your... Because it's not just about a good or a bad reputation. Do you want a reputation for being a home from home? Do you want a reputation for being the highest level of service or luxury? Do you want a reputation for being funky and cool? So, what we go through with our hotels is a process that says, who are you?
Yeah.
Why should anyone bother to stay in your rooms instead of the other 100,000 in the city? And that is a big process that we work on with our independents to say, first of all, understand who you are, and second of all, sell yourself effectively and deliver on the promise. And if you can do that, you can be successful.
Very good. Sorry.
I was going to jump in, Jeff. I think you're right on point. I think about many of the brands that we work with, and the ones that seem to be most successful have an incredibly succinct, simple brand promise that all of their employees clearly understand, and their customers do. So in North America, we have an economy chain, a limited service called Motel 6. It's principally owned by Blackstone. About 1,200 hotels, combination of managed and franchised, whose average daily rate is about $65 US. But they are probably as true to their brand promise as any brand I know. And one of the things that we find there is that when customers understand your brand promise and it gets delivered consistently, they are much willing to forego errors or poor experiences that occasionally may occur and give your brand a little bit more lift. And so to me, brand has nothing to do with price point. It has to do with understanding who you are, who your customer is, and delivering on that brand promise. And Motel 6 is an example. It's not a sexy brand, but economically for an owner, they're one of the most successful investments you can make in the business.
Yeah, and I think it's also true that understanding your customer, but also your customer understanding you. You know, it's that meeting the expectation of your guest. If your guest expects the same decor, the same room, everything in the same position at a certain price, and you keep on delivering that, then you're delivering on your promise. If you promise to deliver high-end, top luxury, and you deliver it, you're delivering on your promise. So if the guest gets what they expect to receive, then they've understood you as well as you've understood them.
Yeah, and I would add one more element to that. I also find that, and I suspect you guys might feel similarly, that the brands who have a strong employee promise, not just the brand promise to consumers, but where employees understand exactly what their role is in delivering that experience and why it's relevant to them and their families, typically delivers an on-brand experience as well.
Yeah, I think if I look at Steigenberger, we have an enormous amount of loyal employees that have been with us for a very long time, have gone through processes. We entertain our own hotel school in Bad Reichenhall, where we train the people. But what I really think is amazing is if I go into our properties, the proudness of our employees being part of the Steigenberger family. And that is something that I think is very, very important, because they are the ones at the end of the day who have to deliver that promise. So, yeah.
Very good.
Underline that.
Well, that dovetails really nicely into the next question, which is, and it is the next one in line, who owns it? Who owns the brand? Jumeirah, who owns it?
It's a good question. I think everyone does. I mean, the customer ultimately tells you what the value of your brand is, both by how often they repeat, how often they recommend, and of course the perception of their experience with you. But everybody who works for you too, everybody who works with you has to be a brand ambassador. They have to live and breathe that. And I think we talk about a lot about the emotional connection that we want our guests to have with who we are, but that also goes for our internal customers as well. If they're not inspired by us, if they don't feel what we are trying to be, then they can't pass that on to the customer. And so I think it's all very intertwined.
Very good. And so, Wilma, you want to?
Yeah, I think to answer the question, I think we all think we own the brand. I think what we do own is the name, because we have registered it. But I think indeed that the customers actually own the reputation, because they tell us what they think about us and whether we stick to what we promise. Also, to give you another example, because you have touched on the new concept. One of the things we did for our new property, our new brand in Amsterdam, we actually did not go through the normal route of looking for associates. We went actually downtown. We set up a box in the middle of Amsterdam, and every girl or boy who came along with a musical instrument, we asked to do a session. And we actually choose the people who had no idea about hotel industry, about service, whatever, to actually do a performance. And that's what they keep on doing at the hotel. So you see waiters who we have trained to do the job. We have employed them, but they will equally take their guitar and do a session in the hotel lobby.
Very good. It's a brave strategy.
Yes, and yeah, but it's about training. I mean, I think we all agree that you can train everybody to service and to waiter and to be a nice barman. But if they do it in an environment where they can actually also use a hobby or whatever they like to do best, so they just have fun, and that transpires, I think, towards the customers.
Very good. And Jeff, World Hotels, who owns the brand there?
Yeah, well, I'm going to come back again to. I'll be quite definite on this one. Although there's a lot of parties that will have an influence over brand, you better make sure as a hotel or a hotel group that you own it. Because if you don't own it, then who does? And I think, yes, there's going to be outside influences. But I think, it goes back again a little bit to what I was saying about the understanding of who you are. And there's some good smart thinking these days around that process of so-called reverse thinking, where you start from saying, what is the desired guest experience at this property? What do we want people to walk away thinking? What reputation do we want to have in the market? And you build your organization around that. You say, well, what kind of working environment then is going to create that desired guest experience? What kind of employees do we need in place to create that working environment? And what kind of leadership do we need to guide those employees? And I think you do have to be quite specific. And obviously, when you're dealing, as we are, with 450 points of view, at least, multiplied by the number of people in the property, that is a challenge. It is a challenge, but I do think that you've got to do all that you can to own it and control it to the extent possible, because that's the only way you're going to be able to find a way to deliver. Having set the expectation, you've got to find a way organisationally and through policy to make sure it happens.
So you're actually saying that the delivery of the brand is actually in the delivery of the expectation of the guest?
Well, I think it is ultimately, and of course I keep pitching this back to individual properties. I mean, I'm under no illusions here that World Hotels is not a recognised B2C brand. I think we have a certain reputation in the business-to-business market, but we see our role really as facilitating our hotels selling themselves in the optimal way in the market, and their brand and the reputation of their brand and how they sell against it is of critical importance to us to be able to help them stand out from the crowd.
Sure. Okay, great. That concept of defining what the expectation is and then setting the processes in place to deliver that can also lead into how you could increase brand reputation and how you can increase your guest experience. Do you find that your customers, Rob, have, they're setting future targets of what they want the result to be, or is it really we know what the brand is, we just want to keep delivering on that same brand, or we want to bring it up to a certain level? I don't know. I mean, how does it work?
One of the changes I've seen in the industry over the last 20 years is that, particularly for the large global brands, is that brand managers, many of who did not come out of hospitality, maybe came out of CPG, consumer products, or other industries, and are coming to the hospitality industry with a different thought on how they deliver, have much more input, I would say, into the elements of the brand, how the brand's delivered, the standards, et cetera. And with that comes a proliferation of all kinds of nuances, which makes it somewhat difficult to herd the cats, so to speak. But part of that provides, as Jeff was talking about, individual experiences, curated experiences that resonate, particularly with younger people, with millennials. And we see with our younger employees, now that we're part of a big company and they have different travel rules, not being able to choose more individual travel experiences and hotel experience is kind of disappointing to them, that they now have to follow corporate mandates to where they want to stay. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity for the industry to create unique personalities that resonate with different personas. And I just look in our company and how many different kinds of people we've got and what kind of travel experiences they're seeking. And sometimes that's difficult to get within a brand like a Starwood or a Marriott. And I find them starting to seek, some of their independent collections, which is a little surprising, but it's something they're interested in.
But it's a paradox, surely, that I think that every brand tries to offer a degree of consistency. That is your brand promise. That is what you're saying that you do. But the customer now actually is looking for more personalisation than ever. They are looking for individual experiences, and you have to continue to evolve those. Otherwise, you won't meet the expectations of travellers of the future. And I think in our own company, we try and bring that to life. In culturally connected ways, through offering thoughtful and generous service, but it's never a steady state. So there's always a state of departure beyond which you have to continually, just move forward to meet ever-increasing guest expectations. And I think the fact that people are looking for personalisation and to be treated as individual does speak very well to independent brands now. I mean, there probably has never been a better time to be a bespoke or niche player in a global market.
Yeah, and there's a certain amount of developing your brand reputation is actually developing it by keeping up with expectations. So it brings to mind things like the conversion in almost every hotel worldwide to flat screen TVs over the last 4 or 5 years, Wi-Fi in rooms, wet rooms rather than bathrooms, kind of thing. The whole refurbishment of the guest experience just by keeping up with expectations. But are there certain things within Jumeirah that you would say are most valued by your guests, and are you looking to steal a march on your competitors in that way?
I think it's become much more than just the physical. 20 years ago, I think a lot of brands did define themselves by their physical attributes and by some of their service attributes. And to me, again, those are just not enough anymore. And that's not really what is being measured. Of course, that's part of it. And for some people in a luxury environment, the physical product and the service experience are paramount. But it can be other things also. It can be the space that you're providing. It can be the view that you have. It can be that connection with food or entertainment or something that you're experiencing in a culture that's different to your own. And so it's not a tangible thing, which I think leads back to this personalization is different for everyone, and brands that can be nimble and adapt to pull more than one lever. So it's not all about the product, it's not all about service, it's not all about the price, but it's about a combination of all of those things and how they make you feel. Is what brands are really trying to deliver now.
I can feel Jeff ready to burst in there.
Yeah, no, I'm muscling in. I'm sorry, but I completely agree with Alison. I mean, you cannot build a long-term competitive advantage on the softest pillow, on the wettest shower, on the softest mattress. I mean, it's just. I'm aware of a fairly significant player out there at the moment who's trying to build a reputation on the fastest Wi-Fi. You're doomed. I mean, it's how long are you going to hold that reputation?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to come along with a bigger pipe. I'm sorry. And if that was your be all and end all, if that was your USP, you're stuffed. Seriously. So in the end, it has to come down to service. I mean, it really does. I think excellent service is going to make up for weaknesses in product, but it will not work the other way around. And I think as hospitality people, we can too quickly get led to the next big screen TV and forget some of the fundamentals. We're in hospitality. It's about how you treat your guests. Now, there may be nuances to that in terms of how you go about treating them, which leads to the kind of hotel that you want to run. But at the end of the day, service is huge, and we've built in some of the work that we're a client of Rob actually at the moment. I should declare that interest. But some of the things that we're asking LRA to look at are very much based around the service experience and the emotional content of a mystery shop. It's a bit more subjective. It's harder to measure, which is why for a long time I think hotel groups have tended to shy away from it. It's harder to nail down, did you deliver? But if you're missing that, and it's all about, was there a trouser press in the room, we're all sunk.
I would like to add something to that as well. I think the location still is of importance. And from a development point of view, that's my role. I have the blessing, but also the curse, is that all our brands are very clear in terms of what their location should be. So a Steigenberger hotel you will never find somewhere on a green field. It will always be the best spot in the city center.
Yep.
Now that means that a lot of opportunity that come across my desk we just can't take. But we don't compromise on it because we think that's one of the values that we have as a company that our customers are also aware about. If you book a Steigenberger, you're always in the center of town. Intercity Hotel is the same. We have had a lot of discussion about bringing Intercity Hotel into business parks. We have decided against it. Intercity Hotel will always be placed within 500 meter maximum of a transport hub, and that can be a train station, main train station, or an airport. And as long as you stick to that, so people do know if I book that brand, that's where we find them. And we think that's, for us, a key issue, even if it hinders us sometimes to do business.
It's really, a lot of the sessions that we see at IHIF year after year, and I've been coming now, this is my 5th year, 3 as a sponsor, is you see a lot of brands being promoted and new brands coming in and deals being done. And we hear a lot about what it is, okay? And I think what I'm feeling here from Rob and you talk about staff measurements and from yourselves talking about service, it's what it does rather than what it is. And what it does is how it's delivered, and how it's delivered is by people, and therefore service is more important than products.
Well, what it is easy to replicate, and that's, I think, the point, is that there will always be someone that can provide, should you say, a wetter shower or a hotter coffee or a softer bed or whatever it may be.
I know a few hotels that can't.
You can replicate that too quickly, and it's the same with price. There'll always be somebody that can do it, better, faster, cheaper.
Yeah.
And so I think if that's the only way you can compete, then you're kind of doomed for survival. It's not really about that. It's about, as I say, how people, how they feel about your brand.
Alison, several years ago, I was at a conference and I heard Izzy Sharp, the founder of Four Seasons, talk about what he calls his golden rule. And I think in that meeting, this was probably 2010, 2011, in the throes of the last recession. And he said bankers, lenders are throwing keys at him all the time to take over their assets. And he said that their service culture, more than location, physical product, amenities, design elements are what makes it so difficult to compete against them. And he said that's as tangible as a brick wall, putting that in place. And I guess the reason, they've grown in a measured way is if they were unable to essentially recruit and put the kind of team together to staff a hotel, then it wasn't meaningful for him to just put another pin on a map. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah. Well, you get it right. You build your brand, you build your value, you build your guest experience, guest expectations increase. Obviously, I mean, once you've delivered something once, I think it's been said, as soon as you deliver it once, it becomes the new norm, and you're expected to deliver to the same standard again. But turn it on its head, what are the value killers? What really kills value in your business? What are the things that kind of like really, make you angry when you see it and you think, oh no, God, we've done that again,
Well, I think it's the value killers are, again, where you completely fail to deliver what you say you're going to, and that can manifest itself in many different ways. Often the killers are the costs. As I think when you try and hide the cost of something, I think that's deeply annoying for customers. When you overpromise and underdeliver. I actually, just in a small personal story, actually my nephew is getting married later this year in Santorini, and we were looking for a hotel to stay, and what was interesting is the same complaints were being written about the same properties again and again and again, and all centred really around the fact that Santorini, for those that have been, is basically built on a hill. The swimming pools are small, and you generally cannot get a sunbed. So why not say that? Why not actually transparently admit what your challenge is and what the other options are, rather than continually apologise for the same guest complaint over and over and over again? That, to me, is just a complete brand killer. To a point, and it sounds very basic, you have to do what it says on the tin. Otherwise, if you don't have that believability and you don't have that authenticity, then you never fix what's wrong, and you continually have to acquire new customers because you're not either recommended by, or you don't have that repeat ratio in either. And I think that often for brand is really, when it comes down to it, is that cost of acquiring new guests that is the differentiator between leading brands and non-leading brands, because it's becoming expensive to do that.
That's interesting. I'm taking my daughter to Santorini for holiday
there
this
we
year,
are.
so I'm going to be putting a
Note
call
to
in
self, don't expect to get
book
buzz.
my sunbed now. Wilma, what's the kind of thing that makes your blood boil at Steigenberger when it goes wrong?
It's just not delivering the promise. So
Yeah.
if I promise to deliver a 1-star Michelin restaurant experience, and the customer comes and it's closed and it's not mentioned, that is not delivering the promise, and you can't cure that. So it's all these little things that we also where hotels are forced to offer things to customer because it's expected, and things can go wrong. So try to make it. Yeah, and we had the experience of the Wi-Fi. I think that's probably, for most of us in hotels, one of the worst experience if it doesn't work or it's limited.
It's certainly one of my big ones, and it's one of the ones I use Booking.com an awful lot because I travel to very different cities, and I always look for the free Wi-Fi or the Wi-Fi included, because nothing's free. The Wi-Fi included, and you find to arrive that yes, it's included, but it's only 30 minutes, and then it's a charge per day. Yeah. So. And that's a real value killer for me, and it's not a lot of money. It's not meeting my expectations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of small issues there. I'm not so sure whether big flat screen television will kill the experience. What I think more, depending on the quality of the hotel, is your towels, for example. That's something that I can easily get upset about. If I'm staying in a luxury property, I want to have luxury towels. That's the experience that I'm expecting about it.
Yeah, from my business, we try to prevent the avoidable things like food poisoning and people falling down steps or trying to get through a fire exit that's been locked or blocked. And food poisoning, but a lot of times not particularly dangerous, but really kills the value. I mean, people remember that.
You actually get killed rather than the value being killed.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
that's quite dangerous. I think the only thing I would add to that is that the one good thing about the world we live in today, you get found out pretty quickly. I mean, some of these cheap shots in terms of what you've been discussing with Wi-Fi, I completely agree. Those are the killers. And again, I go back to service. Not delivering on a service promise or poor service is there's no excuse for it. But you get found out. And it will be online within, 10 minutes, and you better do something about it. And how you go about addressing that then is the key. That's a good recover. If you can recover from that, that's great. If you let it lie, then you're in trouble.
Okay, great. You've done it again. You've led me right into the next question, which is fantastic. Which is, how can hotels manage their reputation? What are the tools at hand to help them manage and to give them the feedback to get it right? Rob, that's really one for you to start with.
Yeah, I mean, I would say job one is deliver an on-brand experience every time. So brands that under-promise and over-deliver is probably a pretty good formula. At any price point. One of the, I don't know, any folks here from North America in the audience? Well, I mentioned earlier that one of the transformations I've seen in the hospitality industry is a lot of consumer products, brand folks coming into the hospitality industry. In North America now, we see a lot of folks in the hospitality industry moving into healthcare, hospitals, laboratories, et cetera. In the United States now, the United States federal government now reimburses hospitals based on patient satisfaction scores that include patient outcomes, meaning you went in for a procedure, and obviously that was the most important reason you were at a hospital, and hopefully that went well. But every other element of that patient journey, from parking to culinary to restrooms to security to janitorial, is impactful on how a patient felt about a particular institution. And so now that industry is clamoring because their reimbursement is a function of how they perform in these areas for better offerings. And so that's kind of the next frontier in patient experience and the evolution of patient experience. Yeah. I don't know if you're seeing that in Europe or other parts of the world, but hospitals in the U.S. are now starting to advertise because they have national distribution, around an enhanced patient experience, and their challenge is now going to be deliver on that brand promise, which
I think there's
questionable.
certainly a space for it because there is medical tourism that goes on when people go to destinations to get treatments and then come back, kind of thing. Thinking more about reputation, things like TripAdvisor, and really quickly, TripAdvisor, good or bad?
Well, it's here. It's a fact of life. You have to deal with it. I think if you respond that folks who opine on TripAdvisor are either tremendously disenfranchised or tremendously engaged with the experience, and therefore you're not hearing from 80 to 90% of the silent majority, is probably a misnomer, because those folks are impacting perceptions and reputation, and you need to address it. So it's a fact of life. It's probably a good thing because it's making everybody respond and run better operations and better brands.
Alison,
I agree. Do you know, I mean, I think what matters is the speed of response and the authenticity of your response. So you can tell quickly, do people, they can do something about what they're saying, or do they keep apologising for the same thing again and again? And so when I think there's a sub-segment of, yes, you can deal with the customer feedback, but it's actually what you do next. Is what's the next step in that cycle, I think, that matters.
Do any of your operators have people, I'm sure you do, but could you describe, how you deal with things like reviews, and do you contact people and say, sorry, you had a bad experience, how can we make it right?
Well, certainly in our business, the ultimate guest experience is owned by the general manager. I mean, of course, that's reviewed on a brand level because it impacts the brand and how people feel about the brand. But ultimately, the general manager is and are passionate about what guests are saying about their business. They should be.
Yeah. Wilma? Yeah.
Well, it's what I said earlier. It's to empower the property to make it right and do it right away and not wait until it's too late.
Jeff, do you look at TripAdvisor? Do you see what people are saying about your sites?
Yeah, we do. I mean, there's some good tools out there, and I'm sure a lot of people out here are very familiar with the likes of TrustYou and Revenate and some of those others aggregators of and reputation management tools. And we do make sure that all of our hotels are using those. I think the point on response is critical. You do have to. It has to be something that's taken seriously, certainly within an independent at the GM level, and somebody needs to be monitoring carefully. The one thing I would say is, I don't think we tend not to rely purely on those ad hoc reviews. I think that can be a little bit skewing. You've got to deal with it, but we also make sure that our hotels are going through a regular mystery shop. Because I think you need to have a quality audit that has some objectivity to it to kind of balance off what might be, a rather skewed impression that you might get through just the regular review site. So it's a combination of those things. But let's face it, there's some very good tools out there these days to help.
Yeah.
I think there's 5 key phases of any guest journey, from researching to to booking, to experiencing, to sharing, etc. And I think it's important to have tools and assets at every one of those 5 stages. There's at any point that the guest journey can go wrong, or there's at any point that you can actually choose to add some magic and add that personalisation to the guest experience. So before they've ever arrived with you, they already have an opinion about your brand and about your reputation, and they can influence your reputation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm just going to read something that was put out there by SGS. Those for you who've never heard of them, SGS are Société Générale de Surveillance, Swiss-based standard certification. What did I say?
Geneva-based.
What did I say?
No, you're correct, but it's actually in Geneva.
Yeah, but where did I say they were based?
Swiss.
Swiss-based. Sorry. I thought I'd said something wrong. Yeah, Geneva-based. Yeah. And they recently put out the internet age. Your reputation moves at the speed of Twitter, Facebook, and other social medias. It takes far less time to destroy a reputation than to build one. How you manage the risk of losing your good reputation is important for all companies, and there is a need to monitor these risks, but more importantly, take steps to manage them. And I think that's been echoed throughout. So brand reputation, your brand values, is it a board agenda item? Is it a standing item? Or, yep. It's discussed at the board level, and things are escalated up if there's, you know, not for every kind of like little incident that goes wrong, but major incidents are discussed at board level.
Oh, absolutely. It's not even on board level, it's even on shareholders level discussed. I mean,
Right.
We are, of course, a rather small company, but our owner is very much involved. And so, yes, it's absolutely, and I think it's important. And what we do is we look at our history. We have an 85-year-old history where we look at what did we do very good, what wasn't so good, but learn from that and build on it as well for the future.
Excellent. And Rob, presumably your you know, audits of multiple sites get aggregated up into executive reports that go to the boards of these companies, and probably Blackstone's Capital, who own, was it Motel 6 you were explaining?
Yeah, so sure. All of our clients take all these kinds of customer experience evaluations, whether they be social media, post-experience surveys from the Medallias of the world, quality inspections, and try and make informed business decisions based on what they learn. I think at the end of the day, you know, transparency is a good thing. And the internet obviously has facilitated and accelerated that. You know, in the United States now, you can't purchase a car without learning everything, simply going to one website and for $25 US finding everything that ever happened to that vehicle from the time it was manufactured.
Yeah.
And every accident that it was in and every service encounter that it had, that information's available, and it makes for a more informed consumer, and it makes brands more accountable. So I think it's a good thing.
Very good. Well, we're almost time up. It's been a very interesting discussion. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything to any of that. If there's any questions from the floor, yeah?
Yeah. No, the focus of this session so far has been very much, I think, B2C. What about let's say, the brand to hotel owner aspect? And I just wonder what you think of this statement. In other words, the proliferation of a lot of these new brands from the major chains, aren't those just as much, or maybe even more so, directed towards owners or investors in hotel properties and not necessarily towards clients? I mean, how many clients actually can keep track of all these different brands that seem to come out at least every 6 weeks or so?
It's a very interesting question. So, if I'm reading the question correctly, you're saying a lot of brand development is aimed at investment rather than customer demand.
Yeah, and so they can put another property into a market and not infringe on one of their existing.
That's a very cynical perspective. No, I don't. There's space in the market. If you look at in hotels, the number of available products and the number of products that are branded. The overwhelming majority of hotels today are non-branded, and of course, because we're in the business, we don't always pay attention to the independently owned, the family-run, the smaller boutique chains. But I think we are far from being overpopulated with brands, given the scale and scalability of the industry. I'm sure you would agree with that, given the nature of your company. But there's a lot of appetite, I think, constantly, not just in hospitality, for new brands.
I don't fully agree to that, because if I think back, if we think back 20 years ago, everybody said, like in Europe, we have only 20% of the hotels are branded. In the US, it's the other way around. So you have like 80% is branded and 20 probably not. I don't think if we look in Europe that has changed. I think those hotels that were not branded, they are still not branded because they don't fit the scheme of the large brands. Because with all the requirements that most of the brands have, they just don't fit. These properties, of course, they will find a home either at World Hotel, or they will find it with other marketing organizations. But I don't think that they will find it with the big brands.
No, I think that's what I'm saying, though, is I don't think it has to be about just the big brands. I think there's just room for more. They don't have to be large scale.
Yes. I do tend to agree with the implication of your question, though. It does come across to me as rather a soap powder strategy, that you stick enough different brands on the shelf, then you can ensure that overall your revenues may improve. But it doesn't necessarily help an individual owner who's chosen that one brand, especially when they find it's been superseded or added to with something extremely similar. And we're going to see an almighty fight, I suspect, when Marriott and Starwood try and sort it all out. I do think that the big change, I'll be very honest here, I think there's an increasing amount of desperation in some of those actions. And again, I'm excluding my colleagues to my left, but some of the big franchise chains, the big international chains, I think as an owner, you've got to look at that and say, well, is this really worth it? What is it giving me now? If the brand name as a signifier, designator of a certain experience is disappearing, which it is because you can understand that the property experience, then then paying a fortune to be part of one of these big chains, what is it delivering for me now? What's the point? I mean, there's a big database of so-called loyal users. How loyal are they? And everyone's carrying 3 cards anyway. So I do see this as a rather, in some cases, there's a little hint of desperation going on.
But isn't that the judge? There's enough checks and balances in anybody's business that are you delivering customers to that brand? Are you delivering shareholder value? Because if you're not, then again, there's no place to hide. You're going to get caught. So for as long as there's appetite for newness and alternatives, I think there is space for, as I say, for brands to grow. But of course, they have to deliver financially. There has to be an economic model to allow them to do that.
There's just one comment I would like to make, and I think what you're aiming at is as well, is that a lot of brands move from being hotel operators, hotel managers, to actually distribution systems. And I think what I see is that there is a lack of looking at really what is the bottom line of this all, because we all know that it comes with a huge expense. So I think this is also where I see from a brand reputation point of view, do we have owners who are happy with what we deliver, and do they want to do more? I think that is the question that will come more and more the next coming years.
Thank you. Sorry, yes.
So I have a very easy question to Jeff, Wilmar, and Alison. So what is roughly the value of your brands? We were talking about brands, and I know it's really hard to give a measure. I googled it now. I think the most valuable brands in the world for Google or Apple, it's roughly, I think, 120 billion. And my question will, if you are making your balance sheet based on IFRS, I think you will state this or put it into the balance sheet. And my question is, what is roughly the value, and what is the share of the whole balance sheet? Is it 20% of the whole assets, or only roughly to get an idea?
Yeah. I'm going to be very frank. I wouldn't know. We haven't.
I could comment on that if anybody's interested. It won't be in any accounting balance sheet.
No.
The way they do those brand valuations is basically to take the market cap, take out some tangible assets, and what's left over is the brand value.
Yep.
So it's not going to be in any balance sheet in the formal sense.
I was just going to say that Steigenberger has become super brand, so they are named in the same line as FC Bayern Munich, BMW, Mercedes. How can you put a value to that? It is there, and it's important for us, obviously, but I think it's
3 different models on how you value a brand as well.
Yes.
How much you can sell it for if you actually turn it into franchisee.
Yeah.
That's one of the biggest ways of
Sure, that's a commercial value. I think the bottom line is if you lose control of your brand and you lose your value in your brand, you've got no value in your business because it is your equity.
If you have a transaction, then it's easy. Then you have a price.
Yeah.
What the market is paying.
Somebody's willing to pay for it.
We were talking a lot about brands, and if you have a blue, or what is it roughly? If it's million, if it's billion, or how you deal with that.
I'm not going to answer that question directly. I'm just going to tell you we've got 450 diamonds in our brand, and it's priceless.
Brilliant. Okay. Any further questions? Any supplementaries? Well, we're just 1 hour, so I would like to say thank you to Rob, to Alison, to Wilma and to Jeff. I think we're all staying around for the next few hours and tomorrow morning anyway, so if there's any follow-up questions, we've all got stands. Well, Rob hasn't, but he can come and join me at mine. And we look forward to talking to you later. Thank you very much for attending. Thank you.